Since Travis Kelce is basically a 40-year-old pop star at this point, and we've got guys like Mark Andrews who are clearly on the decline as well, I think we're going through a little bit of a tight end reset right now, and that's why we need to get some things straightened out at the tight end position. Just make sure to go down there, drop a like on this video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. So getting into the first tier, he belongs in his own tier. I don't think people question this. Brock Bowers absolutely belongs in his own tier. Look, when you look at what Brock Bowers did in his rookie year, it was not only unprecedented, it's actually really sustainable if you think about it. Because keep in mind, he had 153 targets on the entire season, almost 1,200 yards receiving, and only 5 touchdowns, and he averaged 12.2 fantasy points per game. So basically, you have to remember that he had one of the worst quarterback situations last year. And I'm not even saying Jonnu Smith is that great. I've actually had lots of issues with Jonnu Smith myself. But what I am telling you is that with Jonnu Smith, at the very least, they have so much more stability now at the quarterback position for all of their pass catchers, but let alone Brock Bowers, who is absolutely the team's #1 target. Doesn't matter if it's tight end or wide receiver, he will lead the absolute receiving core. I love drafting him on Underdog. His price is not too high for me. Dropping out to our next tier, I think he also belongs in a tier by himself, because I think Trey McBride and the separation between the tight end 3 and him is actually pretty wide. What's amazing about what Trey McBride did last year is on 12.1 fantasy points per game, 2 touchdowns came out of that. It was actually ridiculous what he was able to do. 147 targets and 1,146 yards. The guy was everything for that passing offense. Most people thought it was going to be Marvin Harrison Jr., myself included, last year. So when Trey McBride became the indisputed #1, it was kind of weird. And it also was just bizarre to see how important he was to the offense while also not getting any touchdowns. So I think it's going to be a different year. Touchdowns are usually a little bit more volatile and a little bit more fluid on a season-by-season basis. And I think at the tight end position with Trey McBride, that guarantee of a target share, you have to be able to put him at an undisputed #2. Dropping down to our next tier, this is where things start to get a little bit more complicated, because I like George Kittle and I like Sam Laporta in this tier by themselves, and I think that there's easily a way I could be swayed to put Sam Laporta at 3 and George Kittle at 4. But right now, just based on what we've seen from George Kittle, and not only what we've seen over his career, but what we saw from him last year, I think it was still really impressive. George Kittle was the tight end 2 in a half PPR format on 1,106 yards. Now, I will say this, he did have 8 touchdowns compared to Trey McBride, who was the tight end 3, at 2. Now, that's obviously going to change because he only had 94 targets here. So if George Kittle has that same amount of volume and he just doesn't get in the end zone as much as Trey McBride does, there's obviously going to be a drop-off here for George Kittle. But just the way that the San Francisco 49ers offseason has gone with their weapons currently just really still up in the air for the majority of the part, I think George Kittle still holds on to a lot of importance to this offense, and I think as long as he's healthy, he's going to be a good tight end. And Sam Laporta, I've gone on record several times this offseason by saying that I think without Ben Johnson, what we will see from this new offensive coordinator is an inability to be able to provide top-tier upside for all of his offensive weapons. I'm not saying that the Lions want to start using Jamison Williams less, or David Montgomery less, or Tim Patrick less. I'm saying that it is so hard, and I don't think any offensive coordinator can get the most out of every single player. I believe it will be the big 3. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Sam Laporta. And I think Sam Laporta comes back, has a bounce-back season because it was, frankly, disappointing last year. Although he did go a little bit of a touchdown run towards the end of the season, Sam Laporta is still going to be really important, bottom line. I think that 83 target number possibly jumps up to 100 this year, and he's going to be still very important at the red zone as well. Now, dropping out to our next tier, this is where things get wild. And I'll be honest here, I really don't like this entire tier in Underdog drafts right now because I think prices, as I said, are going through a reset. But we're starting out with Jonnu Smith at 5 and Evan Engram at 6. Again, I cannot reiterate this enough. I don't particularly love these rankings right here, but I feel like Jonnu Smith in particular is still in a good situation for fantasy football. I have gone on record also saying I don't think the Dolphins are going to be that good this year. I think they're going to be a really bad team, to be honest with you. But I also have said I think Tyreek Hill is basically done in fantasy football. And I think that Jonnu Smith is going to benefit from this a bunch because Jonnu Smith already came in and showed them that he's a super important piece to this offense with or without Tyreek Hill. Jonnu Smith had 111 targets this past year and had 8 touchdowns. So if they just at least keep that same volume, he's going to probably be a top 5 tight end in all likelihood here. And then when we've got a guy like Evan Engram here, this is a great value in drafts right now on Underdog, in my opinion. He's like the tight end 11, tight end 10. If I'm remembering correctly, I don't have it pulled up in front of me right now. But you can see it on the screen. Where he's being valued on Underdog right now, I think is actually just underneath what he will actually bring to the table this year. Because with Denver, Sean Payton wants to use a tight end. And this is the perfect addition to this team. At value in the contract basis and just based on what Evan Engram can provide for an offense. He's definitely been a late bloomer in his career. He had his best years with Jacksonville. I think it translates a lot over into Denver this year, and obviously last year wasn't great for Evan Engram. He had a lot of injuries he dealt with, but Evan Engram, I believe, in the bounce back season this year. Mark Andrews at 7, David Njoku at 8. Mark Andrews is just in a really tough spot, just to be honest with you. I want to jump off the ship with Mark Andrews, but at the same time, I really can't. And the reason why is because I was really hopeful that the Baltimore Ravens were going to end up trading him during the NFL draft weekend. That did not happen. So essentially what they've got here is, in my opinion, a better tight end. Probably a backup, though, with Isaiah Likely. Mark Andrews is still going to be a red zone guy who's going to continue to get tons of targets at the red zone. His red zone target percentage is actually ridiculous. I think that continues to be the case. I get it. He dropped a really important touchdown pass in the playoffs last year against the Buffalo Bills. It doesn't really matter on the grand scheme of their entire season. He's still going to be important to this offense. David Njoku at 8. As long as he's healthy, this is still a top tight end. I really don't get the David Njoku distrust in 2025. Just because they drafted Harold Fannin, that doesn't mean anything to me. Harold Fannin is not the guy that David Njoku is. People just need to respect Njoku a little bit more. This has been a top 10 tight end the past 3 years. And even with his injury, he was still top 12. He missed 6 games? He played 11 games in 2024, and he missed 6 of them. And he was still the tight end 11 and had 10.6 fantasy points per game. This is going to be a huge part of their passing game still because he has shown no decline physically. The only issue is whether or not he stays healthy. And I'll be honest, I actually really like Tyler Warren this year in fantasy, and I like TJ Hockenson at 10. I do not actually like TJ Hockenson in fantasy this year. If you look at Underdog, his price is wild. Wild. It's tight end 5. That is so crazy to me on so many levels. TJ Hockenson, number 1, is coming off a torn ACL, in which, when he came back last year, did not look like the same player remotely. Number 2, you've got J.J. McCarthy. Tons of uncertainty there. I have made my questions and issues known with J.J. McCarthy this offseason so far, and you just don't know what you're going to get. Because this is a guy who came from a school at Michigan that didn't want him passing more than 15, 20 times per game. So you automatically think he's just going to come in and feed all these targets, even if TJ Hockenson's healthy. I just don't see it. So I don't see nearly as much upside with Hawk as I do with Tyler Warren. I think Tyler Warren, guys, is kind of being overlooked for one big reason, obviously. Anthony Richardson is a bad quarterback. Daniel Jones, if he's the quarterback, nobody really wants to invest in that offense with Daniel Jones either. But here's the key piece that I think people are going to miss. With Tyler Warren, this was arguably, in many people's eyes, the better tight end in this rookie class. So let's say that he actually is a really good player. Well, this offense actually is kind of perfect for this situation here because Daniel Jones, if it's him, he's actually a pretty accurate quarterback, especially with the short gain yardage. Tyler Warren could easily become a target monster for Indianapolis right out of the gate. So I really like Tyler Warren. I like drafting him at his price on Underdog right now. And Colston Loveland to round out this tier as well. Colston Loveland, I've cooled on him a little bit as I've gotten into underdog drafts, I've drafted quite a bit of him. I'm cooling on it right now because when you kind of take a step back and just look at it all, this whole offense, there's so many weapons, right? And you just don't really know what Caleb really prefers to do. Because Caleb Williams, I highlighted this during the offseason on my Dynasty channel, which is that Caleb Williams did not have a 1,000-yard receiver at USC. Like, he just didn't have one. So it kind of seems like he wants to spread the ball out, which is good for middle-tier fantasy production, but not great for having a superstar. So I like Colston Loveland. I actually did think he was the better tight end prospect between him and Tyler Warren, particularly in the passing game. But I can't really trust the Chicago offense to deliver on the Ben Johnson, Sam Laporta hype just yet with Colston Loveland. But I want to go back to Tyler Warren here because, again, you could see on the screen right now what his price is in underdog drafts today. Tyler Warren, again, he's got a ceiling that is probably closer to top 5. Because if they pepper him with targets with a bad offense and just want to get a bunch of short yardage situations that he will capitalize on, Tyler Warren is going to be a solid fantasy pick at this price right here because the ceiling is much higher, and that's what you need to go for in fantasy drafts. So if you do want to get in on drafting Tyler Warren today, there's a link in the comments below. You can use code FVN when you hit that link. You just deposit your money. Underdog will match your first deposit 50% up to $1,000 in bonus cash. You could get in on Best Ball Mania, which is $25. You could get in on the Schnauzer, which is $3, or you could get into the Puppy, which is $5. I won $19,000 playing Underdog Best Ball last year, so of course I'm going to tell you, give yourself a chance at the big money here. Now, dropping out to our next tier, I've got Travis Kelce at 12 and Dalton Kincaid at 13. So my thing with Travis Kelce, like I said, he's basically a 40-year-old pop star at this point. And I'm not doubting that he's a Hall of Fame talent. He's definitely the best tight end I've ever seen. But Travis Kelce is at the end. Like, it's very much in this situation where it's like, maybe he can return some value getting touchdowns, but the days of him being their number one target, they're done. It's over. And I don't think people are disputing that at this point. So Travis Kelce, this is honestly kind of around where his ceiling is, in my opinion. He's being overdrafted still an underdog, in my opinion, tight end 7. I think that's a crazy price. Not worth it to me. Dalton Kincaid at 13. This could sneaky be a good price for him at the tight end 14 because I think there is still more ceiling there. Now, it sucked last year because I drafted a ton of the Dalton Kincaid and Josh Allen stack, and it did not work with Dalton Kincaid. It worked with Josh Allen, did not with Kincaid. But Kincaid is just in a spot where it's like they still don't really have a clear wide receiver 1 prototype. It's obviously Khalil Shakir is the number 1 guy. They want Keon to be more important, but he wasn't great last year. And then Dalton Kincaid did not fill the shoes that I thought he could fill. So Dalton Kincaid is in this really precarious season right now where it's kind of make or break for him. So I do think that with the contract pressure that he will experience, I do think he has a higher ceiling than this. But right now, based on what I've seen, I've got to put him at 13. Tucker Kraft at 14, Dallas Goedert at 15. Tucker Kraft is in a good spot in Green Bay. I get it. They've got tons of weapons. Obviously, in Green Bay, they just drafted 2 more within the first 2 days of the NFL draft this year. But at the same time, like Tucker Kraft is getting all the tight end work because Luke Musgrave is a nothing burger. And Tucker Kraft is actually good at being a receiving tight end. And the good thing about Matt LaFleur's offensive system in Green Bay is he wants to have this flexibility at the tight end position. He's a very creative offensive mind. These offensive minds that are really creative, like Ben Johnson, like Mike McDaniel over in Miami, like Kyle Shanahan at San Fran, they love a good tight end. I just think Tucker Kraft is still going to continue to be really important for the Packers offense. And then Dallas Goedert at 15 and Isaiah Likely at 16. I'm actually kind of in on Dallas Goedert this year still. It's dangerous because of the injury history and now that he's in his 30s. But I do think that he does have good upside still. I mean, it's basically the same situation as it has been the past several years. And what we've seen from Goedert when healthy has been largely pretty good. So Goedert, I think, is just in the same position as last year where he could absolutely have a top 12 ceiling, but probably won't hit that because he'll miss a couple games. And then Isaiah Likely at this tier. Like I said earlier, I think that he's going to be in a bad spot because of the fact that I think that Mark Andrews still being on this team and under contract for one more season, they're going to want to squeeze all they can get out of him. So I think that he's going to still play second fiddle to a point to Mark Andrews. Now, I think that what we're going to see from likely this year is we're going to continue to see more involvement, especially between the 20s. But I think when it comes to red zone work, there will be times where Mark Andrews is clearly more favored than Isaiah Likely. That's what we saw last year. I think we'll see that again this year. But as far as them being on the field together, we're going to see that enough to where Isaiah Likely honestly has a top 15 ceiling. Dropping down to our next tier, Brenton Strange, Kyle Pitts. I really like Brenton Strange a lot. I really do. Brenton Strange is in a spot with Jacksonville where before they drafted Travis Hunter, he was definitely going to be the tight end. The tight end one, obviously, but obviously the number 2 target behind Brian Thomas Jr. So obviously Travis Hunter's addition does cloud this a little bit. Looks to be the target number 3 in this offense. But I still think that with Liam Cohen, another good offensive mind, by the way, I do like the outcome for Brenton Strange having a top 15 ceiling. The guy's young. He looked good without Evan Engram last year in Jacksonville. I do think there's a lot of potential for Brenton Strange to finish above where he's being drafted right now in Underdog, which is like the tight end 20. So yeah, I do like Brenton Strange. Kyle Pitts at 18. I mean, it's just, what can you say, realistically? He's basically being drafted around here in Underdog. I haven't taken him once. I probably will not take him very many times, if at all. Kyle Pitts is what he is. He's an overdrafted tight end from several years ago that everybody loved and just hasn't worked. And he's had plenty of years to make it work, plenty of coaching staffs to make it work. It just isn't there. So I think Kyle Pitts is a very uninspiring pick, but probably is going to get enough production to maintain top 20 output. And then our last two to round this whole thing out, Jake Ferguson and Mason Taylor. Jake Ferguson is also really uninspiring to me. Last year should have been his year, and he had every opportunity to do it. Now, I'm not saying that he didn't get injured, and maybe that injury didn't linger a little bit for the whole season, maybe. And I'm not saying that Dak going down didn't affect him either. But it's not like he had opportunities taken away from him. Like, he had plenty of opportunities on a weekly basis every week. It was CeeDee Lamb and cross your fingers. He should have been able to fill that role as the number 2 target last year, but he didn't do that. He's just not that good. I really just am not inspired by Jake Ferguson. I think that his price is too high. I'd rather take the shot on Kincaid, who's priced similarly, than I would with Jake Ferguson. Mason Taylor of the Jets. Not my favorite tight end in this class. I liked Colson Loveland and Tyler Warren better. But Mason Taylor is just in a spot that I think makes a lot of sense for immediate fantasy output. So you get him to New York, right? He's a day 2 pick. So he's obviously got enough draft capital for him to sniff a starting spot immediately. So you get him with Justin Fields, who Justin Fields, not the best throwing quarterback, but if you look at what he did in Chicago, Cole Kmet had his best years with Justin Fields. What we are seeing here is potentially a guy that Justin Fields just may feel more comfortable throwing to. And if you kind of just look at the Jets' other options outside of Garrett Wilson, who do you got? You got really nobody of worthy note. So I think that Mason Taylor has a unique chance to have a really decent ceiling here, probably in that top 15 area, but I like Mason Taylor, especially at cost in Underdog drafts. So let me know what you think of the tight ends this year in 2025, and if you want to see the top 30 running back rankings for this year, click on this video right here.